Good morning, everyone that is joining us today. Thank you for being part of this Test Automation Deep Dive 2025. I'm going to go to the comments first. Every time you join us, always say hi and where you're saying hi from. It's amazing to meet with people from everywhere in the world, testers from the community. So I'm going to start. Dot, good morning. Thank you so much for being with us. It's always great to see you here. Uh, it's so cool. Thank you for being here. Jarmo, good morning from Helsinki. Good morning as well. Marwan, you're in Sweden. Hello, how are you? Mishari from, the kingdom. Oh, cool. And we have also Wasim from Norway. Thank you so much for joining us. And everyone that is here today, you're very, very welcome. Just before we start, I just want to share one message with you. And it's that meeting online is amazing always, but meeting in person changes everything. The way and the connection that exists is always super important. And you are part of this community. Even if you haven't attended like a conference, you're part of this virtual community. So I just want to share that if you're coming to this webinar, you can meet with us in Automation Star. It's in Amsterdam, the 10th and 11th of November. And you just need to go to the tickets and use the code webinar10, and you will save a bonus 10% on your tickets from the price that they have today. So if you want to meet in person, if you want to connect, if you want to network, if you want to have fun, if you want to learn a lot straight away from the people that are making the changes in the industry, this is a great place to do it. It's very fast. It's 2 days, lots of information. So this is an information for you. And also, so if somebody in your team needs it or you think it's going to be actually good for you, use this code that is only for the people attending for this conference. So thank you so much for that. But now it's time to go with our speaker, and I am so glad to have her here. So, Elisa, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm good, and you?
All good, all good. Thank you so much for being part of this virtual day.
Thank you. I'm also glad and honored to be part of this virtual day.
No, it's fantastic. Thank you so much. And before I leave you there with the floor, we have for Muhammad a question, and it's will recording of this event will be available? Yes. At the end of the day, for everybody that registered, they will get. I'll be working with all of them today, and by tomorrow you will get all the recordings. So no problem at all. But it's your time, so Elisa, thank you so much, and the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you. So, hello everyone. Today I'll be presenting Stuck in Detention, how repetitive tasks punish adults, where I'll be explaining my journey where I had to do a modern repetitive task and I tried to break through it by creating an automated code and trying to integrate AI into it. So first of all, for today's agenda, we will see what kind of punishments we face at work, how to be able to cheat repetitive tasks at work, what approach and mentality should we adopt in order to turn a manual task into an automated one. I will be introducing my new friend that I made along the way, which is AI, and what did I learn throughout this process. So first of all, what are the type of punishment we face at work? I'm sure most of you, or at least a couple of you here, had to go through a punishment at school. And I'm sure it was not positive, and that's because most of the punishments are to repeat the same sentence 100 times and write them down. And the reason why it's so annoying is because it's repetitive, it's annoying, time consuming, and unproductive. Well, unfortunately, at work we also face similar issue where we have to do repetitive tasks again and again with duties to do, meetings to attend to, and projects to attend to. So it's time consuming and repetitive, yet needs to be done, but does not affect our learning curve. So how to cheat those kind of repetitive tasks at work. You see, back in the day when I had to write the same sentence 100 times, the loophole would be to stick five pens into one and write one sentence instead of five. Well, obviously, at work, you cannot just attach five colleagues to yourself. So the loophole for here is automation. And I discovered this trick during my first year at my company, where I had to repeat a modern repetitive task of going through files, collecting errors, filtering out the repetition, and reporting every single one. So, what type of approach and mentality should we adopt? before we move further into this presentation and for a clearer idea of what's going to happen next, I would like to give a quick idea that what is Valgrind. Well, Valgrind is a tool used in our QA team where we push our test in Valgrind mode and we get out of it Valgrind logs that points out memory leaks error. So the uh, the task that I had to repeat again and again used to be push our test in Valgrind mode, and after that we'll get Valgrind logs in the applicative directory containing the error, and then I will have to create an Excel and save all those errors I am collecting from the Valgrind logs into the Excel. And for a clearer idea of how the errors used to be, it will be a file with multiple stacks. And the first line of the stack would be the error. After that, we will have the guilty function on 2 lines below. And at the end of the line, we will get the guilty file, which will later on also be used in order to find the owner of this guilty function in order to report to him the error. So after saving all the data into an Excel file, I would then have to remove the repetition since if you ping a developer more than 2 times, the third time you'll probably get blocked. So I had to remove repetitions and then I had to search for the owner of each guilty function. After that, I will have to report all the issues and follow up with the developer, the owner team, the person responsible of this error in order to make sure that everything was solved. Well, when seen the first time, like as a one-time process, this might be fine. But the issue was that we used to do this exact same process through 32 folders, and I had to go through 429 files to end up reporting more than 130 errors. And this was hell, to make it short. So, you see, when done manually, this process used to take up to 2 weeks, with most of the time being in the uh, filtering of the errors, of the collection of the errors, and then removing of repetition. Well, thankfully, with automation, it was greatly reduced into a 5-hour process, with most of the dirty work being done by the script, leaving us to only manually do is launch the test in Valgrind mode and following up with the developer to make sure it is solved. So now the collection of the data, the filtering of the data, the search of the owner, and the reporting of the issues are all done through the script. So, what approach and mentality should someone adopt in order to integrate automation into his work? Well, you see, the thing with the task that I was repeating was that it was exactly what I'm saying, a repetition. So you are going through specific steps and repeating them again and again. And that's how I came up with the idea that why not do a code that repeat this exact steps. So first of all, what you will need to do in order to turn a manual test into an automated one is to have a clear path that go from A to Z. And then later on, you will have to break down uh, this path into steps because the whole path will be the script and every single step in the path will become a function that you will have to connect in order to end up with a script. So first, as you can see, for my part, at least for my task, it was very clear where I'll have to break down the path into scripts, into steps. Now, the second thing I need to do is to see how to connect those steps. Well, when you want to connect the steps, you have to keep in mind that first of all, what you need is to see what are the available inputs and what are the expected output of every single step. As for the step, the available input is what you get from the step before it, and the expected output is what you need in order to move to the next step. So, you have to keep in mind that the step that you're working on is connected to the one before and the one after. After that, you will have to see what do you need. What do you need in order to go from step 1 to step 2? For example, in check Valgrind logs for each test, this step is about checking the logs that are in the applicative directory, going through the logs, collecting the errors, and then saving them somewhere in order to for the next step, which is the removal of repetition. So here what I have to think is what do I need in order to go from the step before, which was pushing the test in Vargrind mode, and the step after, which is the removing of repetition. So here, what do I need I need something to connect to the applicative directory in order to reach the file. I need something which is a reading command in order to read the stacks which are in the logs and identify the error. I need a saving command in order to save those errors which I am reading and identifying from the logs and save them somewhere in order to later on remove the repetition. So, what can you learn from this part? My advice is first get it rolling. And by that I mean, when I first started, I tried to have the most efficient, the most useful, the most, let's say, perfect code and in order to move from a function to another, which slow down the process. So what you need at first is a working code that is good enough for you to stop manually working and start automating it. And any perfection, any improvement can be done later on. But first of all, you need a working code that does everything in order for you to free up your capacity. The second thing I would advise is learn smarter and not harder. And that's because when I first started this journey, I didn't know how to create an Excel, but I reached a place where I realized that I actually need an Excel in order to save my data somewhere. That's when I learned how to create an Excel through a code. I didn't try to learn everything from the start and then create my script. And lastly, I want you to start with the code. Don't try to become an expert in a coding language, become an expert in Python and C++ and C Sharp before starting your coding journey. You can start with the knowledge you have as long as you have the basic, and everything else can be perfected along the way. So, why did I use AI when the script was already doing everything? You see, back in the day, I did mention that you cannot just attach your colleague to yourself, but sometime I did end up dragging my friends with me with the punishment. So, well, here every colleague have his own work, so I cannot just ask someone to come and help me with my work. That's when I considered using AI. And that's because even though the script did a great job in removing the manual task from my hand and automating it, it still needed a certain capacity in order to maintain it. After all, it's a script. It's not something that can fix himself if something end up wrong. So I considered using an AI in order to maintain the script. And during this part, I had no knowledge, so I had to reach out to the AI team in my company in order to help me on building the AI. So the first thing they told me is, okay, you need to choose a model. Okay, but what's a model? A model is the base of your AI. And unfortunately, and at the same time, fortunately, we have different type of model. So we'll have to think about what are the different options we have and which one is the best for us. First, we had the option of creating a model from scratch, which means we are using a brand new model that have no prior knowledge, that knows nothing, and we will have to teach it everything we know in order to use it. So it's like raising a newborn. You'll have to teach him everything. And we did not have the time for that since the capacity in the creation of the AI was not so great. So the second option would be to use a pre-trained model and fine-tune it. What's a pre-trained and fine-tuned? A pre-trained model and fine-tuning it means you're using a model that already have a certain knowledge. And what we're doing is we're giving the model example of what are the expected input he will be receiving and what we are expecting him to give us as output in order to train it and fine tune it for it to fit the code we wanted to use for, because the pre-trained model is very general or is for a certain type of use, and what we're doing is we're training this already trained model for him to understand how we want him to be used. The third option would be pre-trained and drag. Pre-trained and drag means the model is already trained and is connected to a huge database, and instead of giving example this time we're giving prompt. What is prompt? Prompt means you're explaining to the model how you want him to think in order for him to understand the data you'll be giving him as expected. So, for example, for better understanding, it's like giving a script to an actor. So, even if you give the script to a great actor, he will not know how to interpret it if you don't tell him how you are expecting the character to be. So here we're telling the model how we're expecting him to think for him in order to understand the data we'll be giving him. And in between the two last options, where few shot is few shot prompting. Few shot prompting means you are using an already trained model and you will be giving him a couple of example, not as much as pre-trained and fine-tuned. It will be less and more like chat vibe and not files. It will be a couple of example of expected input and output, and a small prompt where you'll be explaining what how you want him to think. So in our case, the best option was pre-trained and fine-tuned. Now that we know which model we will go to, we will have to see which size we want. So we decided at first to go with a small model of a 1 billion parameter. Now, what's a 1 billion parameter? A parameter in a model is a variable that is used in order for the model to create links between the input and output we'll be giving him in order to find a connection, a logic behind them. So then when we give him an input, and now without the output since it's already trained, when we give him an output, he will use this logic and links he created between the parameter in order to conclude an output. Now, the problem with the 1 billion parameter, and as you can see here, as I mentioned before, the first time I did the code manually, I had to go through 429 files and I had to create manually an Excel file with all the errors I collected and filtered. So those 429 files will be used as expected input, and the Excel file I created will be used as expected output. 80% of it will be used for fine tuning, training the model, and only 20% will be used to test accuracy along the way. So, as I mentioned, we used a 1 billion parameter, but the problem with the 1 billion parameter is it was too small compared to the 429 files we're giving as data. So it was struggling to have a good accuracy, which led to a 5% accuracy. So then we decided to use a bigger model, hoping we'll get a better accuracy. So we went with the 8 billion parameter. But now that the model is too huge and we already have a big database, which are the files and the Excel we're giving it, we ended up having an infrastructure error, out of memory error. So we had to move from a 10 gigabyte GPU to a 40 gigabyte GPU. As a last option, we decided to optimize the data we're giving and removing repetition, and that's in order for the model to not end up being lazy. And we decided to optimize the model by removing the parameters that are not being impacted. We ended up then with a 33% accuracy. So now the big question everyone's wondering, should we go with scripting or should we go with AI? So for this part, I wouldn't say there's any specific or final answer, because a lot of time a very complex process would be better done with scripting because it has a very clear path, it has a very clear flow that is not changing. While another very easy process can be better done with AI, and that's because it requires analysis, it requires critical thinking, and not just following a certain path. So, the key takeaway I would advise everyone to take from this part is first of all, check your process. Don't go with AI because it's currently the hype, or with scripting because you think it's easier. You should analyze what you're doing, if your process needs critical thinking, if it needs analyzing, if it needs comparison, or if it's just something following a certain path being repeated. The second key takeaway would be to assess the value, and by that I mean look at your project, look at your budget, look at your capacity, look at how much you're willing to give before starting. Because if you do not have the capacity, then don't go for example, if you do not have the budget for the infrastructure, don't go for AI, or if you do not have the time for scripting, don't go for scripting. You have to assess what you have, so you don't end up with a half-done project. The third key takeaway to be is not go big or go home. And by that, I mean don't consider taking only scripting or only AI. Take the best of both worlds. So, for example, in my part, I wanted to integrate AI, but I didn't think about turning the whole process into an AI generated process. What I did instead is take one part of the process, which here is the filtering of the errors and the identifying of the error. I decided to take one function and turn it into AI, but the rest of the script will still be a script. It will not be AI. So try to see how you can use the best of both so it's the most efficient process you can automate. And lastly, I would say you need to check if what you are doing fit the whole process. And by that, I mean when I first started and wanted to integrate AI into my process, what I did is I checked if the input I have from the script is compatible with the AI I'm creating. And if the output I am getting from the AI is compatible with the script, because the AI is part of this process. So I want it to be compatible with the script it is integrated into. And what I would like to say from the whole journey, and not just AI and scripting, but the whole repetitive part, that even though automation saved my eyes and my life, I am still thankful that I had to do this manual repetitive task at first, because by doing it first time, I was able to learn the process. I was able to understand the logic behind it. So now I can actually analyze and see if it's beneficial for my team, if it's useful. I can actually give input on how to improve it or what is not needed, and I can actually discuss with developer when the error is being reported. Because if it was automated from the start, I wouldn't understand how everything's working. So if a developer uh, came in touch with me in order to discuss a certain part, I wouldn't be able to give into the discussion, since I wouldn't understand how everything is being done. But since it was manual at first, I was able to know what's going on. And I would like to say that this whole process allowed me to also think outside the box, because when I was working on automating the process, I came a lot across a lot of obstacles. So I had to think on how to unblock myself, how to find another way to do the process in order to make it work. For example, when I had to come up with finding the owners, I ended up learning HTML and web scraping in order to be able to get them. And it also allowed me to have this new mentality about integrating automation into my team. So now, whenever we have a process that is taking too much time, it's taking from our capacity, it's time consuming. Now, the first thing I think about is not how to avoid it, but how can I improve it in order to have this process still in my team, but in a faster and more efficient way. So now that the punishment is done, everything is automated. I do not have to get stuck to my PC searching for errors. I now have more time to work on big projects. And I'm sure that when everyone integrate automation in their team, they'll feel the same way. Just like a kid's going back to recess after a punishment. Thank you for attending. If you have any question, I'm available.
Thank you so much for your presentation there, Lisa. We have some comments, but yeah, there's an icon on the right that has the little
Hmm.
question mark in a box. If you have any
Hmm.
questions, please write them there so that we can go into our Q&A session. But yeah, while you were chatting there, we got Dorothy Graham sharing that a great example of meta automation, pre and post processing around the tool gives automated testing, not automated tests embedded in the manual process. And another great lesson is start small and learn smart. What do you think about this start small and learn smart?
I do agree with the start small and learn smart because, as I mentioned, I had no knowledge when I first started. And a lot of time I had to reach out to people from the dev team asking how to do that, how can I fix that. Uh, but if I had to learn, I tried at first to learn the actual coding, Python coding before starting, and I realized that what I'm doing is just one video after another, but the process is actually still on point zero. So that's when I decided, okay, I'm gonna start and then later on see what I can learn instead of going through courses with my project still not improving 1 point.
That's yeah, I think you have a very good point there. I want to go to the questions. We have that one there from Dot. And what we have there is I'll share it. What a great talk. Do you have plans to revisit your meta automation, say every 6 months? It may need tweaking after a while. Have you seen this?
Uh, uh, d- if I understood correctly, you're asking if I'm planning to check on my script after a while to make sure it needs any fixing.
I think yeah, that's
So,
I would say so.
so to answer that, surprisingly, the reason why I did this automation was to facilitate the work for QA. But our dev team were more than enthusiastic about this project because now that we have capacity for it, they were able to test their codes more often. So to check there's no memory leaks or memory errors. So they made it part of their plan to push this specific code at least once every 2 weeks, every month. So even if it's on the side, they are the one who are rechecking it for me if it needs any tweaking and any fixing. So when they will see an issue, I'll be the first to be notified. But yeah, it's being used more than expected. So I won't have to actually be the one checking it to see if it's still working or not.
That's very good. I have a question. As you were sharing the talk, I was writing some things here, and I was
Mhm.
wondering, like, are there any repetitive tasks that you would still prefer to check or double check manually?
Uh, to a certain degree, some like if it's a repetitive task, um, I did get, for example, a comment about my repetitive task that someone said they prefer to do it manually to check if it's reporting the correct thing, and that it is not reporting something wrong. And my answer to that was that so you are saying that you prefer to manually report 10 errors to make sure there's no mistake instead of automating 10 errors and just correcting the one that is wrong. So in my opinion, I think automation is best. If an errors will show, it will show, but at least you would have automated 9 out of 10 instead of going through the 10 just to make sure this one error does not happen.
True. I we have a follow up from Dot there, and it's the tool sounds like static and dynamic analysis, and it's great that you have used it so effectively. What about functional and non-functional tests?
Yeah, the tool is very technical, about functional and non-functional, if you mean by finance part of the testing, honestly, I did not go towards this part since not only do I not have, I would say, the qualified knowledge in order to create such a tool with a functional background, but I also think that in the functional part, there's still some corner case that will need more analysis than just a quick script that I would be able to create. Even when it comes to AI for functional, you will need more of, if you remember, the pre-trained and RAG and not pre-trained and fine-tuned. Since for functional tool, you will need a huge database that will be used depending on how you want the script to think. And unfortunately, when I created this project, we did not have this much, like, there was no budget allocated for this project. It was done out of a request from me because the repetitive task was becoming too time consuming. But for function, you will need actual big budget to use a RAG. If you want an example of a RAG, ChatGPT is an example since it uses Google, Windows, Microsoft. It uses any knowledge there is on the internet. And for you to have, let's say, the right to use this knowledge, it will need more than just writing a couple of lines.
Thank you so much for that. And the last question I have here is, how long did you suffer with a repetitive task before you looked into automation?
Those 2 weeks I had to do it. This
Okay.
was, and specifically because, so we do business trip to Paris with my company, and I was allocated this project during my business trip, and it was my first time traveling. So in between, so I had to meet the team. I had to jungle between meeting the team, doing my task, and getting used to jet lag and everything. So I guess that was my last straw.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time, Elisa. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you to everyone that has been here on this talk. Please remember, we have four more speakers, four more topics to go through the day. So we'll see you around, and also if you cannot attend all of them, you will get the recordings at the end of the day. I hope to see you very soon, Elisa.
Thank you, me too.
Thanks a
Hope to see
million.
you
I'll see
soon.
you in the next talk. See you.
Thank you.